April 18th County Board meeting to order. Please join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any disclosures of interest this morning? Hearing none. Review and approve the previous board meeting minutes.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the previous board meeting minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Review and approve the county board agenda. Are there any changes?
There are 3 changes, Chair. Under the consent agenda, court security grant application request. And also under the consent agenda, County Government Awareness Month. And then under for your information, high water press release.
Move approval with the additions.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion passes. Review and approve the following items on the consent agenda. Everyone's had an opportunity to look over the consent agenda.
Move approval.
I'll second it.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Regular agenda, county attorney's report.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and committee, our commissioners. It's strange to be talking to you rather than just shouting from the back row. But but I do.
Lawyer that shouts from the back row. That's not a very good picture.
Is front row. Anyway, I appreciate your time. And I also really appreciate that you taking the time to put Sexual Assault Awareness Month as its own agenda item. I do firmly believe it's important enough to warrant some time during this meeting. As we all know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I've been a prosecutor in Goodhue County for over 25 years. Since 1999, I've specialized in prosecuting sexual assaults against adults and children. From that viewpoint, I can tell you that sexual assault in Goodhue County is a significant issue. It impacts all of the individuals that you guys represent. It impacts people that you know, that you love, your neighbors, your community members. We're not just standing by idly. I can tell you that Captain Collins Loxlin is a member of the Goodhue County SMART team. My boss, Steve O'Keefe, has asked me many times, what does SMART team mean? I can tell you that it's an acronym for Goodhue County Sexual Assaults Multidisciplinary Action Response Team. Now that you've heard the full title, it makes sense that we call it the SMART team. It's made up of law enforcement, prosecution, advocacy, medical professionals, as well as members of the faith community, mental health professionals, as well as the Goodhue County Social Services, many other team members. We were formed in April of 2007. Our job at that time was to develop protocols so that no matter where a sexual assault survivor or victim in the criminal justice system, as they're labeled, comes in to report an act of violence on their body, that they would be treated with respect and above all with a professional response that was uniform. So whether they responded to a hospital, whether they responded to an advocacy center, whether they responded to the police station to report that act of violence, that response would be uniform, it'd be professional, and most of all, it'd be effective. And so that's been in effect since April of 2007. Since that time, we've modified it, tried to update it, make sure that it's still effective, make sure that that response meets with most current expectations of professionalism. I'd ask that we take a moment to join together to sign this proclamation. It's not just words. It actually impacts the individuals that we know and care about. Sexual violence knows no boundaries. It impacts not only that individual who experiences it, their body, their mind, their spirits, stays with them. It doesn't define them. It can cause them to rise above, to fight harder. It also can cause them to go in a different direction. It also impacts the people that love them, the people that are their life, that are supporting, having to fight for them, excuse me. And more importantly, it impacts the community. When we hear about acts of sexual violence within our communities, it touches us. Maybe it causes us fear. Maybe it causes us anger. Maybe it causes us compassion or empathy. It knows no boundaries, not just of that person, of the people who love them, of the community who wrap around and support them. For those reasons, I ask that we start today signing this proclamation. It starts from the top, saying that sexual violence has no place in this community. Sexual violence has no place or future to stay here. And I would answer any questions you have as well, because right here, I'm in the front row today.
Thank you for bringing this forward. You're absolutely right. It not only affects the person, it affects the community, and I appreciate that. Would you please read the resolution or proclamation that you're asking us to, so that the public can hear it?
Yes, Commissioner Anderson. Proclamation in recognition of Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas sexual violence is a major public health, human rights, and social justice issue that impacts every person in Goodhue County. Whereas nationally, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of sexual violence in their lifetime. And whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month draws attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and has implications for every community member. And whereas the purpose of Sexual Assault Awareness Month is to raise public awareness about sexual violence, educate our community on how to prevent it, and share resources available to those impacted by sexual assault. Whereas there is compelling evidence that we can be successful in reducing sexual violence through prevention, education, increased awareness, and holding perpetrators who commit acts of violence responsible for their actions. And whereas we should start the conversation about consent and healthy relationships when our children are young, and continue having these discussions throughout the course of our lives. And whereas ending sexual violence is a community responsibility, we must work together to educate our community about what can be done to prevent sexual assault and how to support survivors. And whereas anyone can be a leader in preventing and ending sexual violence, as employers, educators, parents, and friends, we all have an obligation to uphold the basic principle that every individual should be free from violence and free from fear. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Goodhue County Board, on behalf of all residents of Goodhue County, does hereby proclaim the month of April 2023 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Goodhue County, to keep our community members safe from this crime and to stand with survivors and victims of sexual assault.
Thank you.
I would move to adopt the proclamation and thank Erin for her continued work on sexual assault in Goodhue County and advocacy for it. It's a very noble cause. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second that. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Erin. Sheriff's report.
Okay, Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. A few months back, I was here requesting sign contracts for the school resource officer program in Zumbrota, Mazeppa, Pine Island. That time I was asked to go back to the drawing board and try to get some statistics on where other local school districts were at. And in fact, Administrator Arneson reached out to the what was it?
I reached out to the Association of Minnesota Counties. I reached out to the Minnesota School Districts Association, and then there's one other teaching organization, but only one of them had information on it, and AMC did do a survey on it.
Yeah, they did a good job, and you have it in front of you with comparisons on what other communities are doing, and we're right in the ballpark, as you can see. So we went back to both school districts, and they did actually sign a 1-year contract as requested from you board members, and we'd asked for approval of those. But my second recommendation will be to respectfully ask, moving forward, if you so agree, and if the school districts desire to continue the programs to go into a 3-year contract starting in 2024. So 2 recommendations are, one is to adopt the 1 year for both school districts. They're already signed by them and myself. And the other would be to continue on with the 3-year program after 3-year
Yes.
contract after 2024.
This would be with 60% of the cost being paid by the school district and 40% by the county?
That's correct. Yep.
Questions from the board?
I'd move approval of the 1-year contracts and to work towards 3-year contracts starting and bring back to us in 24.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to accept the recommendation of the sheriff. Is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Human Resource Managers report.
Good morning.
Morning.
The Personnel Committee met this morning and reviewed 2 position requests from Public Works, and I will refer to Jess Greenwood on the details.
Good morning, Commissioners. As we alluded to, we asked the Personnel Committee to authorize the hiring of an engineering technician in beginning in fourth quarter of 2023, and the addition of a Parks and Trails manager beginning in 2024. The Personnel Committee recommended option 2 as presented in that report to authorize adding an engineering technician in the fourth quarter of 2023 and to take a look at the Parks and Trails manager during the budgeting process that we'll be conducting later this year. So with that, I'll stand for any questions from the board.
Questions? Yes,
It's more of a comment stuff. I mean, we've always been supportive of some of the stuff when you said you're having staffing level issues. We've been supportive in the past of changing the job description. I would hope that that's kind of more where we're going. If you're having trouble getting a highway maintenance, that you can move to apprentice. Hopefully we can change it in the future going forth with getting some of the pay changed to make that not, and even from the engineering position. I don't support increasing any level of staffing out there. I think if you were fully staffed, things may be better, but if we have to tweak the job description to make it easier to hire to fill these positions, I think the board's always been fully supportive of that. I guess that's what I would support also. It's the only comment. Like I said, I don't oppose expanding the staffing level out there, but we have to do change positions. So we can.
Jesse mentioned at the committee meeting that you and or Greg were considering possibly becoming adjunct professors so that you could teach the classes that apparently sometimes are given, but there's no instructor to actually do it. Is there any possibility of developing any kind of an internship project that if you're going to train anyway? You train specifically how you want things done?
That's the intent of adding this position, is to write 2 new job descriptions, as Jason's alluding to here, to expand who we can offer a job to. So one of those positions would be an engineering apprentice or something similarly named. The intent of that position then would be to have staff train that individual on what exactly they need to do to perform the duties of an engineering technician.
Right. And the parks manager, we have a part-time one.
Yes,
You're requesting the full-time.
yes.
Oh. So at the committee meeting, my issue with, I did support the technician position, and my issue with the other questions is just that I do feel that it's very important that, if at all possible, we get through our salary review and the new chart, pay chart that we're looking at, and try to move that along. And that's going to come with a bill, and we don't know what that is. And until we know what that is, I have a real tough time signing on to a whole bunch of other things, just because I don't know if we can afford it. But it does not mean that I don't support what Jess is trying to do. I'm only thinking of what's the bill going to be and how are we going to do it? So
Just did explain too with what we're paying per consultants that the engineering tech, I'm in support of that. I'm fine with that, but I still want to look at the parks manager and trails manager more in the future. I think just the savings that, and Jess did explain, the savings is basically a net zero, but it, I still want to see where our pay study comes in before we do another hire. That's my take.
And so I think the reason you're saying you're not doing that with the engineering tech was the cost savings were quite clear, or the fact that it wasn't going to increase our cost was quite clear.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
And it's going to technically save us money because we won't be going out to find consultants.
I see.
Sure.
Scott.
And the other thing that's a distinct reality is that even if we post that position right now, the odds of hiring somebody by the end of the year is not very good. There's not very many out there.
yes, that's when we're back to that there were classes offered, but no instructor to teach it.
So there's no increase in cost to the county, to at least to begin with, and
That's what
it
I'm
takes
saying.
time to
Well,
get
currently,
that.
Public Works is budgeting for the department head salary. He'll be retiring this year. So it's not like we would be having to budget additional dollars
Right.
for this new position. It would just take the place of that individual.
Right, yes.
Well, I support the tech work wholeheartedly. I've said that for a long time. We need to just figure out how in this market we can find people. And we have to massage our job descriptions to get people in the door for that. When it comes to the parks, I think in my mind, we're going to get there. We're going to have someone in charge. We're just investing, $2 million plus into the park system. And we need management of a $2 million investment. So I think that's going to happen. If it has to wait till we get started with the budget process, hopefully early on, we can come to an agreement on that position early on. So that by the time we hit 24, we can be well on the way to finding someone. 'Cause we can't invest in our parks and then not manage them. And we need people to do that. And that's what the park manager, that position will oversee that part. And we need that. So.
And
I concur, I believe we'll get there, Jess.
if the board elects to take another look at the parks manager position during the budget process, Mary and I can start working on job descriptions and try and paint that picture of ultimate costs a little clearer for the board.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
one wouldn't anticipate the Parks and Trails Manager as a full-time position, correct? Just for future reference going forward. Certainly hope not, but
I think
is that what you're anticipating, a full-time job?
Parks and Trails Manager position would be a full-time job.
Okay, well,
Currently, it's a 50%. It's 50% of someone's job responsibility now. And then a portion of the department head.
anything else?
So what you're looking for is a motion to approve the technician part? Is that what you're looking for?
Yes.
So move.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Yes.
comment, is this providing for leeway in the job description to try to hire and to get in? You've got leeway, not specifically engineering tech, but you can massage the job description to find a hire to fit somebody into that position.
We'll write two new job descriptions. So ultimately, there'll be 4. There'll be an engineering apprentice or something similarly named,
Yep.
an engineering tech, senior engineering tech, and a graduate engineer job description.
With the hopes of filling
One position.
one position,
Yes.
as long as that's what the motion's to bring up.
Do you want to clarify?
That's what
Are you saying fourth quarter, or are you saying once they're ready, post them?
I say as soon as you can get it out there, because they're gonna be gone. They're gone every day. We need to be, it'll take 6 months. Unless we're just absolutely lucky.
Do they graduate in the spring?
Yes.
Yep.
However, they do graduate in spring. However, like the engineering techs, RCTC didn't have any instructors this year, so they
Yeah.
didn't have a program.
Yeah.
So there's not too many graduates coming out of RCTC this year.
No. But it's a better time to hire. than-
Absolutely. Yeah, the other engineering schools will finish
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
Do we need to give a recommendation for Greg to choose the teaching position?
We've been dropping lots of seats.
I was gonna say that seems to be what's needed. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Anything else? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
I
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
I think MinDOT has been talking about trying to figure out a way to have some of their staff do some teaching, but there's a lot of hoops to jump through to get that in place,
There is, yeah.
because they're suffering just like we're suffering. They can't find them, and it would be advantageous to them as well as all the counties they serve to do that.
Correct.
So hopefully something comes of that.
Land Use Management Director's report. Good morning.
Morning. The first item is a request from Holden Church to request to waive paying their operating permit fee for their septic system. I did receive a letter from the Holden Church Board yesterday. Recently, they received a letter asking for pumping inspection records for the tank located at the Holden Park site. To the best of our knowledge, this is the first time we've received the request since the installation in 2013. We have no problem supplying the information requested and will be sent upon the return of the Park Committee member shortly after April 24th, 2023. The goal of the Holden congregation and vision of the Park Committee is to improve and maintain this facility as a resource for the greater Goodhue County community, yet keep the rental costs very affordable. We respectfully request your consideration in waiving the yearly fee attached with the letter now and in the future. Your consideration will assist our congregation in providing this resource to county residents. Thank you for your consideration. I explain a little bit in the background of the report that operating permits are required. We updated our ordinance in 2014. Basically, there's certain triggers that happen that would trigger that you'd need an operating permit. This one had a trigger that we received something and we sent them out the report saying you need an operating permit and it's $100 fee, which is set by the county board. So they have requested to have a waiver of that fee. We do have 3 churches out of the current 60 active operating permits in the state, in the county. We'll have a lot more as these triggers pick up. But right now we have 3 churches that own property that have that, including this Holden Church. The other 2 systems have drain fields. So as long as they give us that information, we didn't make them give them the fee to pay the $100 a month, or excuse me, a year. In this case, they have a holding tank. Holden did, long story, property was won, it was split, it was added, da, 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 da. So now they got a letter saying they need an operating permit and $100 fee. They're asking for a waiver.
Yes.
This is not the church.
This is church property. Church is here and then the park.
Church
is-
has its own septic system.
Yes. This
Yeah,
is. a
this
separate
is
park.
just the little park that's west of it.
Yep, it used to be attached to the parsonage. And then a number of years ago, they split the parsonage off and then connected that with another piece of the church property.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with this. My question is to the other churches. What we're seeing with them is not a park with a holding tank. It's the holding tank is for their church. Is that correct?
Basically, my understanding is if you have a holding tank, or if you're not a residential home, then you would need an operating permit. We want to make sure that you're pumping your system and you're maintaining it. And so in this case, it's on a separate parcel. It is a holding tank. And so as long as they show us that they're pumping it and maintaining it, we're okay not having them pay the $100 fee and filing the.
And I'm fine with that. But you referenced that there are other churches.
Yeah,
And is it for their main church building or it is?
yeah.
Which is different to me than this park,
Mhm.
which is only used during the summer, which is only used sporadically.
Right.
That's a whole different ball of wax than if it's every Sunday.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
And those other
I would
churches,
move to approve the recommendation of staff. But that we still get the records.
Yes.
They still have to supply the records.
And I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded. I have one question. Lisa, if the fee is waived, but there's still the responsibility of letting you know that once a year it gets pumped out, or
Mhm.
is it once a year or?
it depends on the usage, but if they show us their pumping records and, you know, if they, like you say, this is a park that's only used in the summertime
Right,
sporadically. If they do it every couple of years based on their usage, we'd be fine with that.
All right, but they're agreeable to that?
They are. They said that in their letter.
Okay,
My understanding is it's not a public restroom until you unlock the building and people are renting the building. So you really know
Yeah.
how much use there is, and I'm sure there's an alarm on the tank or whatever, and hopefully there is, and so I don't have a problem with it.
all right. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion or questions? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes to
Thank you.
waive the fee. Thank you. All right, bills be leases.
Okay, this is another one of those administrative projects that take a lot of time and cross a lot of department lines, and has been brought up recently as something that the county should address. We do have the 3 landowners that are affected by this in the audience today, so they did get a copy, the same copy that you did, and so they want to hear your discussion today. I know Commissioner Anderson is familiar with this because he's been on our park board for our land committee for a number of years. But just to give you a brief background on this, Mr. Gowdy split the property, those 3 parcels in the 50s and 60s, those 3 individual landowners. When I look at the 64, 65 aerial photos, we do see docks along the lake. Then the county actually received the area in red, which is the shoreline from NSP back in 1968. And of course, our connecting trail between the main part of the park and the 7.5 acres goes on that piece. In 1975, the Lake Billsby Liaison Committee of the county board negotiated the remainder of the Gowdy property for the park, which is that in the yellow, those 2 pieces that our main park is on in the 7.5 acres. So we purchased that property in 1977 from Mr. Gowdy with Lawcon funds. And this map was included with the request to purchase that. According to the Lawcon provisions, it says the local unit shall not at any time convert any property acquired or developed pursuant to the agreement to uses other than the public outdoor recreation uses as specified in the project proposal. That was attached. without prior written approval of the director or regional director. This document that had that provision in there was never recorded, so it wasn't of record for people to find in the public record easily. DNR had it. We didn't have it here. 2002, the county.
Can I just stop?
Sure.
there? So, if Knightberry Heritage Title did a title search, it would never show up.
We did not see it in the recorded documents.
Right. So it didn't matter.
Right.
It wasn't recorded anyway.
Everybody knew that was county property. What we didn't know until recently was that restriction was on it. Okay, so 2002, since the original owners were in there, it's been bought and sold numerous times. 2002, the county came into a lease agreement with those owners because a number of them had built pavilions and structures on the county property. So at the time, the board thought that it would be a good idea. Let's at least release that. And everybody recognizes it's still county property, but we're letting you lease this property. That lease expires in 2027. In 2019, the county did apply for legacy funding for the pavilion. In 2022, we started to initiate a renewal process of the original lease because of a pending sale, and nothing was agreed to. And then earlier this year, as we're going through the documents and grant restrictions, there was a request to have Jeff and I do some deed restrictions on the park because of the Lawcon funds saying, you know, you need to restrict this and record it. And I think DNR is getting a lot better about telling people who have Lawcons that you need to record a deed restriction so you don't have this. And during that time, they said, by the way, you have one on this other parcel.
For the public's education, can you explain briefly what the Lawcon grant money is, what that stands for, what that is?
I don't know what the exact acronym is.
Maybe.
Jen probably can, but basically what it is we apply through DNR, and it's DNR funding, potentially DNR funding and National Park Service funding. So as we talk a little bit later on the conversion, which we just recently did, we put something together, we give it to the DNR, and then the DNR has to go through with the Park Service to see if they would agree with it. So ultimately, Park Service has to agree to it. So we required, so when they asked Jeff and I to do some deed restrictions, we did a little more research on it, and then that's when the DNR said, by the way, you also have that restriction on the original park. So that's where things had to kind of come to light. They did agree that the one property that has a current lease can continue till 2027, but then after that, everything has to be off. So we talked to the DNR, we had a phone conference about possibilities for this and the conversion possibility, which again, you just went through with the trail. So initially we asked if we could sell the county property in front of those houses to those landowners and keep an easement for the trail. And the DNR said, absolutely not. They will never go for that because when you first applied in 77, you gave this map that showed you had all that lakeshore and you would have never got the Lawcon funding if you didn't show that as part of the project. So she said, that's just not going to fly. And I said, okay, well, what if we were concerned about the docks because, you know, they have docks out there. Basically what she said is everything is public property now. So working with Jess Greenwood, we don't necessarily want to maintain docks or the other structures. So what I then asked is what if we kept the land and sold them like a 20-foot easement along the shoreline so they could put their docks out and then they would still remain private, but they would have a recorded easement to do that. She thought that was a possibility. So that's the one aspect of it. The other aspect is, you go to the next. During the same time in 2002, the property that's on the furthest east property of the individual owners was just purchased a new owner in January of this year. Back in 2002, this owner needed to have a septic replaced. And it's a really tight topographic area to put a septic, and the only place really was to put it on the county land. County granted them a conditional use permit, again, not knowing that
That we couldn't do
we
it.
couldn't do it. So this still exists. The way that this is written is that it can stay there as long as it's functioning. If you need to replace it, you have to remove it. However, again, it's such a unique piece of property that there's no other place to put it. So we talked to the DNR about that. I said, we still need to deal with this septic issue. And she was agreeable again, saying, yep, you should do a conversion on that piece. And so she said, basically everything above the ground and below the ground is public. So it's got to be removed, or you've got to do the conversion or something. So that's kind of the big picture of it. So there's a couple options that we'd like to propose to you. One is that kind of going through the same process we did last time with the trail. So what we would need to do is get a market analysis of the value of what the easement would be, what the septic area would be, and get that market analysis. If it falls under $10,000, then it goes under the small conversion process. If it's more than that, then it's a bigger issue. We got to do an EAW and more stuff. So we get a market analysis of that. Then we also, as you recall, we have to go find another piece of property to replace it. It's kind of like one of those wetland things. You took one away, now you got to get it replaced. So we have to go find another piece of property. Spoke to Scott Repke again this morning. DNR did say you could find another piece of property attached to Billsby, or you can attach another piece to the Cannon Valley Trail. Some of you who've been on the Cannon Valley Trail know that Scott's got a number of areas that he's looking at for future purchase. Plus, I think we still have some pieces that the county owns, so we're going to try to figure something out there. So we get a market analysis, gives us the dollar amount. We find another piece of property, it's got to be same or better. So size wise and value wise to convert. Then once we get all that together, then we can make the application to the DNR and National Park Service and see if they'll go for it. So that's, I think, staff is recommending that we do that part as a minimum. I did speak to one of the landowners yesterday, and they did request that we also ask for an easement to cover the current leases that they have with the county, which would be a bigger ask from the DNR and Park Service. So if the board is agreeable to look at that at the same time, we'll get the market analysis of all of that at the same time. I would suggest that, we work with the DNR, but maybe we put that as two different applications. So as I say, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So if we do the one for sure for the dock and the septic, and then have the separate one for that other part, then that way, if they're not tied together, then maybe at least the dock will go through.
And I'm not understanding what the other part is.
So let's see, can you bring up maybe our website? We can show that. Jeff will try to bring up our website to show an air photo on it. So, and the part that has the septic on it, there's not a whole lot of other structures on the county property. It's really their septic.
Yep.
There might be some sprinklers, but the other two parcels had like pavilions and walkways and stuff down to the trail area, and then their docks. So basically our leases kind of cover what was privately built on the county property.
I see. So the 20 feet would be for the docks, but there's some of the landowners are requesting also the area where they have structures. to be
Right.
Part of the lease, I see.
So I'm thinking, and we can work with DNR, which she thinks would be the best, but I'm thinking if we kept them as two separate requests, we might have it.
They might not reject the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, if you can turn on the air photos there.
So what she's talking about is,
Base map.
I think I understand.
It's a total one. Try the air photo. Yeah. So, yeah, Jeff will zoom in here a little bit.
so 20-foot strip along the beach.
Right.
Would be the one, then the rest of it is this part.
Yeah.
And then right here is that septic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that bigger chunk, which probably will go over 25,000, which then puts you into the other category,
Over 10,000.
or over 10,000.
So that's why I'll work with them to see if they want to see this as
What is that?
separate conversions.
Yep,
Yes,
Yep. there's a trail that goes over to the
7.5
the
acres.
bigger piece to the, over there, yeah.
And at the time the structures were built, did they understand it was on county property
I,
or?
So
were they
we
permanent?
talked earlier this morning, I think there's, you say a couple of pieces, I see 3 pieces, and you and I talked about that. The 20 feet along the shoreline is an easement.
Mhm.
correct.
I think we need to talk with the DNR about the septic actually being a piece created and added to that property, so it is not an easement, it is not. So that going forward, no matter what they do, it's on their property. I think that's the smartest way to deal with that.
Selling that.
conversion.
Well,
It all
that's a
will be-
conversion and the easement on the 20 feet by the shore, DNR is saying you're gonna have to do conversion on that too. Because you're taking it away from being public to being an easement to a private property.
With public need to be public land,
Correct, correct.
period.
Correct. No matter what we do, from what I read from Lock-On, even if it was an easement onto that land, that is the bigger piece, all structures would have to disappear.
Yes. So that's what we would clarify. If they were to agree to let us lease the structures that are there, they may not make them go away, but from our initial conversation, we didn't have that part of the conversation with
Right.
DNR, but from our initial, she says it's all gotta go or it becomes public.
So what you're asking for is, should the county go ahead and try to get the easement by the shore? Should the county go ahead and try to either get an easement or actually sell the property with the septic to Mr. Island? Or, and then a separate ask would be that bigger piece, and is there a way we can do some kind of
Agreement.
easement of something on that?
Yes.
And I think that makes the most sense. The problem that we've kind of encountered in this is when we look at putting docks there and saying that, well, they're public docks, but you know, the landowners can park their boats there permanently. That is a direct conflict with our dock ordinance at the rest of the park, which says you can't park a boat there overnight. So now you're making an exception for these 3 docks, which how do you, which is really not public then, it's really private.
Right.
Because you're taking away that public part of it when you do that. So I think the easement's the best solution. I agree with that. And I think the best solution for the septic is actually if we can get it transferred away from us and let it be with that property. And then ask the question, and if DNR says no, you're pretty sure Park Service is gonna say no.
Yes,
It's gotta get DNR's blessing before it goes any farther.
yes.
And we've kind of gotten a little bit of DNR's blessing for the easement part
Mhm.
by the lake, and we've kind of got their okay on something with the septic. So let's keep those separate and deal with the other one in a different way.
Yes.
How far is this away from the parking lot?
Oh, can you zoom on a little bit? Parking lot's quite a ways to the east.
There's kind of big natural buffer between.
Yeah. So,
And what's the value to the county of owning the section between the trail and these properties?
it's the connection between the county's park, the main park, and then the 7.5.
The trail
acres.
is, but,
The trails.
but not the green space that they're using. I would guess the public isn't actually using the
No,
property.
it's being maintained as if it's their lot.
Yes,
They've been maintaining it.
for decades.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's just, it's a matter of how much the park service is gonna allow us to
Right.
let go of.
I think you believe they wouldn't allow us to sell that part of the property to those landowners.
Correct. That was the conversation. They said that's not gonna happen.
And I think you believe it's quite likely they won't allow the structures to stay on that part of the land.
Quite likely.
Quite
And that's,
likely.
so the little bit difficult part of this is they can't give me absolutes until I give them an application, and I
Yeah.
can't give them an application unless I have all this data behind it.
Mm-hmm.
If the board agrees to let me start working on the conversion process, getting a market analysis, the question also then comes to you guys, do you need all three of them to agree? This is kind of a one-time thing, because if, let's say, one of them agrees and two don't, or two agree and one doesn't, we don't want to have to go through this conversion
Right.
process if the new owner says, hey, I want that same deal.
Mm-hmm.
So are you, I mean, like I say, you've got your landowners here, are you suggesting that if we go through this, that they all have to agree to it? Because we're not
I
gonna do
would
it.
say yes.
I would guess it's hard for them to agree before they know what the cost might be,
Right.
but maybe that's not true, but.
Just some general direction so
Yeah.
that they know what they've got to prepare for.
Yes, to me, it makes sense because otherwise we'll be doing this every time there's a sale of these homes.
Yeah. Yeah, and the easement that we would write for the dock would be a permanent easement that would run with the land.
Mhm.
We would write it very specific. Jeff and I will write that, so it's specifically to that property for dock purposes. And so it's, you know, we can make it as specific as we want, but then it would be recorded with the deed.
And then is it all done in 27, or does that continue into perpetuity? And is it supposed to go with the sale of the house, of which I believe we have had issues with in the past?
So what we would propose in the conversion with the DNR is that that is a permanent easement that would go with any sale. So we wouldn't, again, have to redo it every time the sale comes. The lease for the other part goes away in 2027.
And there's
One of
only
the
one,
partners.
there's only one that has
Agreed.
the lease on that.
Correct.
That's the middle.
the- where
middle
they-
Property has a lease that goes till 27. None of the other have valid leases.
So, yep.
Value of this. What's the value of that dock?
That's what.
I mean,
you
Well,
wanna
that's
find
what,
out.
that's what, I
Yeah.
mean, either it's gonna be, if it's not under $10,000, the process, most likely you'll be back here talking to us.
Right.
If it's under $10,000 to do that conversion, then I think that's the direction that Lisa's looking for, is to give her direction to go
Get a market.
find the conversion factors, find what she needs to do to move through this process with DNR and National Park Service. And in the end, we'll attach, if it goes through, we'll attach an easement for each shoreline to each building site. The land in front of them is public property, so they can cross it anytime they want.
Sure, of
There's
course.
nothing we can do about that.
No, no.
That is, we wouldn't want to do anything about that. The real question is, the other pieces of it
Mhm.
need to be removed. The little, storage sheds or whatever that are down there. And they would not be able to put anything on that land
Mhm.
and nothing but a dock on the shoreline.
Yeah.
Does that have to be opened up to the general public? Do they find out about it? Why do they have a right to it, not anybody else?
To what?
That 20 feet.
20 feet? Because we would be converting it out of Lock-On into county ownership or into a permanent easement for personal use.
Which is against.
But we have all the shoreland in the park.
So
We
we
would-
don't have to open that up to the general public.
That's the intention of this, is not to open it up to the public.
Just basically minimum is to give them a permanent easement. County will still own the land. Give them a permanent easement to put their dock out there. This is, like I say, this has got a long history. And, you know, NSP owned it prior to Gaudy splitting those off. I did a quick search in the record. I did not find a easement or a document showing that NSP allowed them to have docks out there. But regardless, once it came into county ownership, you can't do adverse possession against the government. So they can't claim that, especially the fact that over the years, everybody's known this is county land, it's county land. The maps show it. Their deeds don't go to the lake. We came into that lease agreement to, again, specify this isn't your land, we're letting you lease it. So they don't have adverse rights to this.
I understand.
So it is a bit of a mess. I think part of the deal is back in the time when we applied for the LawCon funds. I don't know that they were instructed to record any kind of restrictions that would have been available in the public record. But now we're at this situation where here we are. We've got some possible solutions. So how can we move forward?
And roughly, what is the length of each of these 20-foot sections? Just roughly, are they
Yeah,
100 feet or more than that? Or I
I'm just looking at about, let's say about 200 feet. most.
pretty long.
Yeah, in front, yeah, 150 feet, something like that.
Right. I think at least,
You can, that's the question that she's asking you right now. What do you want to do?
so in the time that you've been involved with this, the public has never used this dock space or,
It's never been advertised. Like I say, our maps have
see.
always been there. We've
Uh-huh.
put the trail there. We've let them lease where the pavilions are. We don't disallow other people on the lake to have docks.
but they
So-
own to the water.
Not yet. Some of them do, but
I see.
so that's not unusual. What's unusual is just the history and the timing of all this and the fact that they've had the docks out there and we're trying to now basically continue to work so that they continue to have a private dock out there.
And I think, Todd, maybe your question is, should the general public have the same right to that property? Yeah, and historically they have not. I mean, legally they might have, but historically they have not. So it's not that we'd be taking away a use that people have been using,
Correct.
but this could be a potential use should we decide that.
It's clarifying a little because if we look at other places on the lake too, technically they're putting their dock on county property.
I see.
The difference is where the money came from. Because we showed the map that had our shoreline on there in a grant application. It was the grant that had the restriction on it. So it's not that we own the property, it's just because that grant says, basically I asked them, so what you're saying is if you touch me, I'm yours, and they said yes. So it's adjacent property. So that's really the biggest thing is because we had a grant in 1977.
There's no way to go back against that grant to repay it or do something different with another dollar, which it might be a whole convoluted episode.
Well, basically, that's what we're
Well,
kind of doing in a small thing with these conversions is we're taking it out of that.
Are we able to assess, I mean, it sounds like this is fairly time consuming. Are we able to assess administrative costs to doing all this easement and the conversion and stuff to settle this?
We can, and that's one of the questions is, like when we did the plats along Billsby, we had the landowners divide up the assessment costs, all the costs. So we will definitely keep track of the cost of the appraisal.
I would think we need to. I mean, it seems, I get where we're going. It seems just to be able to allow these people when they've done this, but they've knowingly bought these parcels of property with what has been platted and it's not in the deed that they have, presuming they would have to know that they don't own that. So we're doing what we can to make it work for them for what they bought. So
Right.
there should be some,
Shouldn't be our cost.
it shouldn't be our cost to
Right.
be able to satisfy the situations.
And you're also asking if it needs to be all three as opposed to just one or two.
Do you want, because like I say, they're all here listening, so do you want to give the directions that if we're going to do this, all three of them have to, or we're not doing it?
Well, I would certainly suggest that just because I don't want to do this again.
Well, I think it just makes sense that the only way to recapture the cost is you have to split it 3 ways. And one obviously with the septic is a little different
Mhm.
than just the shoreline. I think the shoreline's one piece, the septic's another piece, and we just need to solve those problems. So I would move that we go forward with working to get the 20-foot strip along the lake out of Lock-On and into a place where we can do an easement to it. I would secondly move that the septic either become an easement that we can do, or if possible, get it completely off and transfer that property to the landowner. And third, ask the question before we get too deep into it, if there's any chance the middle part could become an easement. I think the other thing that,
Take the public land out in the middle.
Where their
The
pavilion.
green space.
yeah, just ask the question, find out what, I think I know what their answer is gonna be, because they've kind of given it to us, but I think we've been asked to ask that, we'll ask that again. Then, just that's my motion, and the cost of all of that, staff time, transfer time, all the stuff becomes part of the consideration when we do the easements. That's my motion.
Could I suggest a change to it? Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
The septic system, I really would suggest that we go through the conversion process of literally getting them.
Yes. Right.
Is that what you said?
Yep.
Yep.
I
Right.
said either, if they won't give us the conversion to sell that to the landowner, then
Something else,
get the
though, right?
permanent easement like we're gonna get by the shoreline, which basically we're trying to get it out of Lock-On,
Right.
so that we can lease it or give an easement to those property owners. So we're actually getting the 20 feet out of Lock-On. We're getting the septic out of Lock-On. And then the last question is, can we get some kind of concession on that center part and see what they say?
Mhm. So regardless whether we purchase, we sell this to them or we sell them an easement, it's a conversion. As you were saying, you're converting what was listed as Lock-On out of that and just no restriction on those pieces then. So doesn't matter if it's easement or fee, we have to go through the conversion process.
All right, so I have a question on that, and that is if there's a septic system on an easement on county property and something goes wrong with the septic system, and all of a sudden you've got sewage all over, is that our problem, the homeowner's problem? Whose problem is that?
The way, it's the homeowner's problem. So, they have to maintain their system and they have to replace it. So we had this one, and I believe over on west on Billsby, there was another CUP years ago that needed similar situation with a septic. I don't know if you were on the Board of Adjustment at the time or not. They've since owned it now. Similar thing. They still have to maintain it. They have the responsibility of doing it. It's just, we're allowing you to use the land for it.
It's much cleaner if we get out of an easement with it and it becomes on their property, if Lock-On will let us do that.
Right.
That's the best case scenario. Absolutely.
Chair, we don't have a second yet. There's quite a bit of discussion going on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I asked a question. That's right. We do not have a second. All right.
You had made a comment to try to change the motion, but I think your question was answered, so I will second the motion. Barring your question was answered, so you didn't want to change the motion, correct?
Thank you. Now, is there any more discussion?
My concern again, and I said, what happens when the public comes in and somebody that lives in town says, I want a shot at that? Do they have every right to have the lease go to them? Does it have to go to the connecting landowner?
Is there a law
Is
on
it a
easements?
public
I'll
road?
ask the county attorneys present, and I don't think you can just give an easement to anybody. I think they have to be adjoining, don't they?
I would think so. You have to go through, like we said, the DNR and the Park Service. If somebody that's not an adjacent landowner comes in and asks for that, I would think it would be highly unlikely that either one of those parties would agree to that, much less both of them.
Right. That would be my thought.
I think it will be a condition of lock-on, that's why we're doing it.
And are you, the number 4 was, what do you want to charge for the sale? Are you asking us that today
That,
as well?
not today, because we
Okay.
won't know, because we'll need the cost
Assessment.
assessment
Yes,
and
I
and
understand.
if I can find a piece of property. So you might have to purchase it. I'm trying not to.
I think the other interesting thing with this was when they said, like you said, so if we touch it, you're it.
Yeah, if you go.
So the other property we bought out there that was bought with, I think, tax forfeiture money
move
to the east of the main park.
Yeah, this piece right up here. This piece right there. That was not purchased with lock-on, but when we put in the application for the pavilion, we showed the area that would be considered, you know, part of the park or whatever. So, yeah, that's when I said,
So that's covered by lock-on now too.
yes.
They touch it, they
Yeah,
get it. Pretty interesting concept. But
it's kind of a thing where you're showing what you have, and because you've shown that, you've got more skin in the game, and they're more likely to give you.
I understand that. It improves your odds.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
hey,
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you very
Motion
much.
passes. Good luck on that.
Thank you. I'll talk to the homeowner.
All right, there are several for your information reports. All right, staffing report, monthly finance report. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? County board committee reports.
not really a committee report, but I do just want to give a shout out. As we saw Monday, Public Works is not over with plowing snow yet, is it? I just have to give a shout out. As many of you know, I live right close to one of the county shops. So when the trucks go out and I'm sitting there having a cup of coffee at 5:30 in the morning, I see that they go, and they were out before 5:30 in the morning on Monday. And they have had one whale of a winter plowing snow. I know there were stretches where they worked 20 days straight, and the call outs for early this year have been unbelievable. And I just thank them for the work they do out there. It's not easy running that many days in a row and 12-hour days, or, as far as we can run them time-wise before they need to get off the road. I just really appreciate the work they did this winter, and hopefully it's not anymore. Hopefully we're done with it.
Hopefully we're done with that.
Yeah, but
Do you get involved in the flooding?
We're actively working on issues on County Road.
Welcome to spring.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jess. I just have a couple. The housing committee met. One of the things that the food shelves have definitely seen a dramatic increase with different financing that is being taken away now. So those who are food insecure is growing. We're working with Small Cities Grant for something coming up possibly in Zumbrota. There is a large Cannon Falls project near the school that hopefully is moving forward. Hard funding developers, that seems to be one of the more challenging areas. And then yesterday there was someone who we talked to about broadband. It's PCS Technologies. And they're moving into different counties, and their suggestion is, they do fixed wireless. What they said was that up to this point that fiber had grown to about $30,000 per mile to put in, but they say it's coming close to doubling now going into the future, so about 60,000 per mile to plow fiber. Their suggestion was, and what they do is put up 120-foot towers. They say it can go to up to 6 to 7 miles. And at least we're talking in the hundreds of thousands instead of the millions as far as the cost goes. So I think for a very big project, they were talking about $300,000, I think I've got. So it comes out to about $3,700 per passing instead of
30,000.
30,000.
30,000 was, yeah, the last one. So it's a definite possibility. They're going to come back with an actual document with real costs and what they could possibly do. But it might be a possibility for getting the entire county wired up.
Which is exciting, and that number sounds small only after you've heard the $36,000 number.
Yeah, right. And they do say that they can do the speeds of 120.
Oh,
So,
they can.
yeah.
Good.
So it does sound like it could be a very distinct.
Well, there's
possibility.
areas of the county, a lot of them in your area, where a tower like that will reach a significant number of people. There are areas in Hay Creek where 1,000-foot tower wouldn't make a damn bit of difference because you can't get some line of sight to it. So there's challenges still in other areas, but for vast areas, and I don't think south of Kenyon is served very good. Roscoe isn't, Cherry Grove isn't.
Because the carrier has chosen not to.
Right. And I think there's some real advantages to something like this at targeting a large chunk of landmass in the county. So that's excellent news.
So that'll be interesting to see if we can do something significant with that. Right?
I will say, we had a housing trust fund meeting here recently, last week, ahead of your housing meeting on Monday. And we talked about, there's about $1 billion in housing funding that'll probably come out of the state in this legislative session. And we need to
That is
be,
right, yeah.
we need to be positioned to help match dollars. And our housing trust fund is part of that. We're gonna have another meeting after the legislative session's over and we know what really shakes out, but it's gonna be who has the matching dollars to start out a project. It's gonna get the funding. If you don't have the matching dollars, it's going somewhere else. And Goodhue County needs to be in the mix on that, along with Wabasha and Winona and Houston and Fillmore, the ones we serve in their HRA. So we have to keep our ears open as to how we can do some of those things and hopefully make a difference.
Okay. Any new or old business?
Do you want to talk about, or was Marty's deal put under the no wake deal was put under consent agenda?
Yes, that's his press release.
Okay.
Well, I will say something about the river cleanup challenge, which we were going to have a cleanup challenge at two places, County Road 18 and Sturgeon Lake Road, and also down at Cobble Park through the city. Both areas are underwater. Therefore, we have moved it to our backup date of May 20th. And as of the moment, we have heard from a few places that are joining us: Coon Rapids, the city of Coon Rapids, Stearns County, Benton County, Hennepin County, Ramsey County. Winona was checking with their insurance. And was there anything else?
I think there's one more, Central Minnesota.
Anoka,
Yes.
Anoka County. So they are joining us.
Oh, that's exciting.
NPR, someone from NPR called me, and so we did have a brief moment on the radio, and she was very kind. She said, well, she had heard of cleanup efforts on the river happening over the years. She's never heard of anything this big. So that's kind of cool.
Good work.
So May 20th, everyone.
9 o'clock,
Pardon?
starting at 9, starting at 7. What
9 to
time?
11.
You're bringing donuts?
No donuts.
Okay.
I was thinking of a food truck. All right,
It's gonna
review
be a
and
lot
approve.
more to clean up in Caldwell Park, you know?
That's
Yeah,
what I
there is,
think.
there is.
It will be a lot
New,
more.
let's see, review and approve the county claims.
So
Second.
Right, moved and seconded to pay the bills. All those in favor say aye.
Hi,
Aye. Motion passes. Motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very, very much.